Our Japanese tour, October 2018, day 11, Kanazawa. We travelled from Tokyo to Kanazawa, and you can look on day 11 on this map. It took 2.5 to 3 hours to travel the distance. We'd purchased a Japanese rail pass, and we enjoyed every moment of this ride. Super quick train, 140 to 170 kilometres an hour. So we arrived at Kanazawa and we had a look at the bus and train station and the unique architecture of the gateway, and of course selfies in front of these structures, and this glass and steel railway station, bus station with lots of shops. And then we, on the way to the hotel, we took a photograph of this Starbucks coffee or tea mug. You walk just around the corner to our hotel, and near there was the Myuri Temple. So after we dropped our bags in, we went and had a bit of a look around the immediate area. This temple was built in 1643. There's a statue in here of the founder, and the statue was built by one of the disciples. If you believe in this sort of thing, it's supposed to be very responsive to prayer. So I didn't bother reading too many of the signs because it was raining, but then when we reached the front steps, my wife thought that they were asking for money to get in, so we didn't go in. Maybe that I just didn't want to pay for going in. There are a number of old districts in this town, and very few were saved after World War II without too much damage, and the one we walked through was very beautiful. The old buildings were very beautiful. I'm almost sure this is the Ishikawa district, and the little buildings house geisha establishments and other things, of course. And then we moved on to the Kanazawa Castle. Now the Kanazawa Castle is pretty much in the centre of the town, and all the local attractions are within a 2-kilometre radius of it. And we visited a few of them, like the Nashi district and the old temple and one of the museums, but I don't know what I've done with all the photographs of the art museum. And you can walk most of this, even from the hotel. It wasn't that far, and not far from the railway station either. From 1583 to the end of the Edo period, Kanazawa Castle was the seat of power of the Myōryū clan, and it's a feudal lord system in that period, and second only to Tokugawa. The castle was burnt down in 1883. Like a lot of things in Japan, things are made of wood, and a lot of things get burnt down. And the only surviving buildings were the storehouse and the gates, and one of the gates was moved to the eastern entrance near the shrine. In 1990 a building project was underway, and this describes the building construction, the rebuild. So obviously it was not the original building, but we walked up to the top and had a bit of a look over the land surrounding the tower. If you pause this, you can have a look. between 1788 and 1990, this area served as the Kanazawa University. And here's a bamboo reconstruction of how the building was built and put together. And as we walk around this museum or display of the construction of the castle, you get a better idea of how precise and accurate and neat and tidy the Japanese building technique is. And here are some of the woodwork, the way the wood joins, the tiles, the stones, but mostly it talks about the precise construction. Although it was in Japanese, that's my general impression. Have a look at how lovely, not only my wife, but the woodwork is. How clean and neat and fresh the design is. How tightly it fits all together. And you really can't see any nuts and bolts and stuff. And it was quite intriguing. Now the corners of each building are constructed in a similar way. Here's an example of how it was constructed in different woods. Now when we went outside, we went wandering around and we found a moat and a fence line, and we followed that up an incline and realised we were heading for a viewing point. And this is where my wife just loves gardens and such, so she really enjoyed it. At the top of the one side of the viewing point was views of the castle, and we didn't go into all the buildings, but what we did look at was nice. And then on the other side of the top of the mountain was a view of the cityscape, and below it the busy main roads surrounding the castle. Don't really see anything here other than the autumn nature of the trees. Quite beautiful. You can see down there, about 50 feet down and 50 feet above ground level, was this man hanging on a rope, walking on a hanging garden and weeding and cutting away rubbish and just doing the gardening on the side of a hill. As we left the viewing area of the top of the mountain, have a look at this, the smile on her face. She loves to wander around and look at the different plants and things in gardens. We're neither of us any good at gardening, but yeah, she just loves it. Me, I couldn't be bothered. So in about 1848, at the end of the Edo period, a storehouse was built, and this is one of the only of two buildings that are still standing after the fire. And the sign was in Japanese, so I didn't really follow what the storehouse was for. Although this building was closed, there was an admission fee, and this area was the information area, I believe. And you can see the different bits of construction that have still remained after the fire. Now this was our way out, and I believe it is the eastern gate, and you can see the woodwork and the uniqueness of the woodwork that when they've put it back together. And we left the castle grounds, and on the outside of the castle grounds was a moat. I'm always intrigued by how castles are surrounded by moats. In England and France, it was a similar story, especially in England. And later on, on our tour, we see a lot more of the castles with moats around them. So on the way back to our hotel, we stopped in the main market in the city, Omicho Market, and it's a very busy market near the Kanazawa railway station. and this is the front entrance of that market. And we wandered through, and initially I was not interested after walking all day in walking around a market, but then I started to realise how unique and different Japanese foods, sweets, fish, meat and vegetables are all different to other parts of the world. You can get your calculator out and work it out for yourself how much it was. But my wife took copious amounts of photographs of the different shops and the different produce. There wasn't that many people around, which was good for us. I don't particularly like crowds, so it was easy to walk around. An amazing amount of food, and the place was clean as a whistle, really was. And there was, even with near the meat stands and the fish stands, it didn't stink like other markets. And we were intrigued by the size of the mushrooms and the many and varied mushrooms. Here's an example of some Japanese red sweet potatoes, which my wife likes. I don't particularly like them. And some sea fungus. I don't know what these were. And then the different and unique asparagus, quite big. Containers were different coloured flowers. I don't particularly know what these things are, but they look a bit like green carrots. Then the cleanliness and presentation of the meat section, and this unusual gold ice cream. We didn't buy it, but it looked great. And then the takeaway type foods were lined up in a row. I thoroughly enjoy the sushi. That's my favourite of the bento type Japanese foods. Of course, Japanese noodles and other foods that I couldn't identify. And more ground vegetables and lemons. Even the lemons were different. Some flowers and pumpkin. And then the fruits. The fruits were perfect, all wrapped for protection. And yes, it was lovely. I think this was the processed meats and sausages and quiche and pâtés, and then the dried spices and such. Not sure really, but that's my guess. The video was produced by myself, and it's the end of another exciting video of the Japanese tour, October 2019, day 11, Kanazawa Castle, Amishi Market and the surrounding district.